There's a place where most of the land is not just uninhabited, but uninhabitable, where roads vanish into sand, where towns rise and fall like mirages, where even the capital city sits on land the desert wants to reclaim. Welcome to Mauritania, a country almost no one talks about and even fewer can imagine living in. Covering over 1 million square kilometers, Mauritania is larger than California and Texas combined, but 90% of that land is desert, not desert in the romantic Lawrence of Arabia sense, but a brutal, dry, punishing Sahara. Temperatures here regularly exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Sandstorms choke the sky. There are places where rain hasn't fallen in years. And in this heat, in this emptiness, live about 4.5 million people, mostly crowded along the Atlantic coast, where the air is just slightly more breathable and the land only slightly more forgiving. The capital, Nouakchott, was built in the 1960s for 15,000 people. Today, over 1 million live there, many in slums, without electricity, sewage, or clean water. There's no natural river, no stable rainfall, no trees, just wind, sand, and struggle. And this is the best part of Mauritania. Go inland and there's often nothing. No roads, no infrastructure, no jobs, only small nomadic settlements clinging to survival. But it's not just the environment that makes life here so hard. It's something far more haunting, something that officially doesn't exist, but everyone knows is real. Mauritania is one of the last countries on Earth where slavery is still practiced today. Mauritania was the last country in the world to officially abolish slavery. That happened in 1981, but for nearly 40 years, it was only abolished on paper. Owning another human being wasn't a crime, just frowned upon. It wasn't until 2007 that Mauritania passed a law criminalizing slavery. And even then, it took 6 more years before anyone was ever convicted. But here's the truth. Despite the laws, slavery still exists in Mauritania. Not hidden, not underground, out in the open, in broad daylight, as if it were still the 1800s. Estimates vary, but human rights groups say tens of thousands of people, some say over 90,000, are still enslaved. That's nearly 2% of the country's population. Slavery in Mauritania is hereditary. If your mother was a slave, you are a slave. You are born into a caste system, trapped from birth. There are no chains, no slave auctions. But there is control. Total, permanent, unquestionable control. Slaves are forced to herd cattle, to fetch water from distant wells, to build homes they will never own, to cook meals they will never eat, to raise children for masters who will never let them go. They are often denied education, denied health care, denied identity papers. And because many don't know life outside this system, they don't even realize they are enslaved. Many have never seen a courtroom, never voted, never had a choice. And for those who try to escape, life doesn't get much easier. Because even when you leave slavery, you're still treated like someone who doesn't belong. Even for those who aren't enslaved, life in Mauritania is brutally hard. The country is one of the poorest on Earth. Its GDP per capita ranks near the bottom globally. In some rural areas, people live on less than $1.50 a day. There is no major industry, no large-scale farming, no robust tourism, no safety net. Over a third of the population is illiterate, and youth unemployment hovers above 30%, in some regions even higher. For many, life consists of waiting. Waiting for rain that may never come. Waiting for food that may not arrive. Waiting for opportunity that's never been there to begin with. Climate change is making things worse. The Sahara is expanding. Traditional grazing land has turned to sand. Entire villages have been abandoned. And in the cities, there's no room. Nouakchott is choking under the pressure of migration, poverty, and slums built from rusted scrap metal. For the youth, the only real dream is to leave. But leaving is a gamble. Thousands of Mauritanians have tried to escape by sea. They board flimsy wooden boats bound for the Canary Islands, Spain's distant outposts off the coast of Africa. It's a journey of over 1,000 kilometers across the Atlantic Ocean. Many don't make it. They drown, disappear, or are caught and deported back to the very poverty they risked everything to escape. One young man told a reporter, "If I stay, I die slowly. If I leave, I might die fast. Either way, I'm dying." In Mauritania, the question isn't how to live. It's whether life is even possible. But what makes this even more tragic is that most Mauritanians can't even speak up about it. Because silence isn't just a symptom of poverty here, it's a government policy. Mauritania calls itself a democracy, but in reality, it's a military state, wrapped in a thin layer of civilian politics. The president is elected, yes, but for decades, power has stayed in the hands of the military elite. Every transition is carefully managed. Opposition parties are allowed, but only if they stay quiet. The real power lies not in parliament, but in barracks. Criticize the regime, and you disappear. Demand justice, and you're arrested. Talk too loudly about slavery, and you're labeled a traitor. In 2012, one of the most prominent anti-slavery activists in the country, Biram Da Abeid, publicly burned old Islamic texts that had been used to justify slavery. He was arrested, not for hate speech, but bas tamatbit, for undermining national unity. He's been imprisoned multiple times, beaten, threatened, and yet he keeps fighting. And he's not alone. Across Mauritania, brave voices speak out, only to be silenced. Journalists are censored. Human rights groups are shut down. Refugees and freed slaves are often jailed for being stateless, their documents lost, their complaints unfounded. The justice system is a formality. In rural areas, it barely exists. Police often refuse to intervene in slavery cases, claiming it's a family matter. And even when cases do reach the courts, prosecutions are rare, convictions are rarer still, punishments often symbolic. The truth is, the system was never designed to protect the poor. It was built to preserve the silence. And it works. Because if you're starving, you don't protest. If you're afraid, you don't speak. And if you've been invisible your whole life, you don't expect anyone to see you now. But the most heartbreaking part of all this is that even those who are legally free are not truly free. In Mauritania, freedom isn't just about laws. It's about who you are, because even if you're not legally enslaved, you can still be treated as less than human. Meet the Haratin, a group that makes up as much as a third of the country's population. They are black Mauritanians, the descendants of slaves, and in many ways, still treated like it. Mauritania is divided not just by wealth, but by caste and color. At the top are the white Moors, lighter-skinned Arab Berbers, who have historically ruled the country. They dominate politics, military, and business. They own the land, the livestock, the schools. At the bottom, the Haratin. Even when free, they are often landless, jobless, excluded from positions of power, treated as permanent outsiders in their own country. Many Haratin live in segregated neighborhoods. They are expected to know their place, to serve quietly, to never challenge the order. Marriage between Haratin and white Moors is rare, and often taboo. In some areas, Haratin children are still denied access to quality schools. They are steered into manual labor, domestic work, or nothing at all. And it's not just social, it's economic. Without land, without capital, and without legal recognition, many Haratin are stuck in an invisible prison, one that doesn't need chains because it has something even more powerful: tradition. A Haratin farmer can work the same field for 40 years, but if the land belongs to his former master, he has no claim. No legal rights, no security. He can be evicted in a day, and often is. In theory, Mauritania's constitution guarantees equality. In practice, it guarantees nothing. Because here, freedom is not defined by the law. It's defined by lineage. And when your bloodline marks you as a servant, your entire life becomes a quiet sentence. You might be asking, how is this still happening? Why hasn't the world stepped in? The answer is simple. No one wants to. Mauritania sits in a region the West considers strategic. It borders the Sahel, one of the most unstable areas on Earth. Terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and Boko Haram operate nearby. Jihadist violence is rising in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And in that chaos, Mauritania plays the role of the stable partner. It hosts military training exercises with the U.S. and France. It receives millions in aid from the European Union to stop migration and fight extremism. In return, Western governments look the other way. When activists are jailed, nothing. When reports of slavery emerge, silence. When journalists are threatened, no comment. The United Nations has condemned Mauritania's record repeatedly. But the Mauritanian government simply shrugs. It signs agreements, hosts summits, smiles for cameras, then goes right back to doing nothing. And Western diplomats let them. Because in geopolitics, reality doesn't matter. Image does. As long as Mauritania keeps jihadists out, as long as it keeps migrants from reaching Europe, as long as it provides stability on paper, no one cares what happens to its people. They are the cost of silence. A silence bought and paid for with foreign aid and protected by indifference. This isn't just a failure of one country. It's a failure of all of us. Because the world knows what's happening in Mauritania, and it chooses to do nothing. But even in this darkness, some refuse to give up. For most of the world, Mauritania doesn't exist. It's a name on a map, a country no one can pronounce, a blank patch of desert between Senegal and the Sahara. But for the people who live there, it is very real, and so is the struggle to survive and to be free. Despite the risks, some are fighting back. Biram Da Abeid, the anti-slavery activist imprisoned again and again, ran for president. Twice. He didn't win. But he got hundreds of thousands of votes. And something even more powerful. He became a symbol. A symbol that you can be born into slavery and still rise, still speak, still fight. Other grassroots organizations, like SOS Esclaves, document cases of modern slavery, rescue victims, and try to push for change, one courtroom at a time. But their resources are limited, their leaders are harassed, and their victories are few. Still, they don't stop. Because for every person they help, for every life they save, for every injustice they expose, Mauritania changes. Slowly. Painfully, but undeniably, change will not come from the top, not from the generals, not from foreign embassies, not from press releases. It will come from people who've had enough, people who refuse to accept that their worth is determined by birth, who refuse to be silent, even when no one is listening. And maybe that's the real reason the regime is afraid. Not of protests, not of Western journalists, but of the truth, that Mauritania is full of people who still believe in freedom, even when they've never tasted it. If you found this story eye-opening, subscribe. We cover the places the world forgets, the people it ignores, the systems it allows to persist in silence. This was Mauritania. A country where life is almost impossible, but where hope refuses to die.